always say we want our inner adult or our higher self to be the loudest voice in our heads. So doing whatever you can to come back to that place. And that usually involves some kind of getting back to regulation, essentially. So calming the body, doing what you can to connect to yourself, ground back into your body. You can't be in that inner critic and also consciously be feeling your feet, feeling your legs, being in touch with your whole self at the same time. That inner critic really is also an inner child part. It's a little kid that just doesn't have tools or resources to know how to get your attention. If you can have compassion and treat it like, oh, this little kid just doesn't know how to communicate to me right now, then that can help to calm that voice down and start that connection with yourself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Authentic Conversations. If this is your first time with us, I am Amarelis, my co-host Susan, and today we have a special guest, Natasha Levinger. She is, I'm so honored to have you here today.
Aww, thank you.
So Natasha does inner child healing, energy healing. She is a spiritual coach. To me, she's very special. I found her at an amazing time in my life where I found both of you guys, and you guys came into my life first with Susan and then Natasha, where I was in a big transitional moment of period of finding myself again, grounding myself. And someone posted on one of my pages, I want to work with someone who does energy healing. And I've heard of that and I love that. And I had my life coach, Susan, and I just felt like I needed another part of it. And of course, like it always happens, right? No coincidence. Natasha's name was dropped and she just, I was like, this is it. I don't know what she is. I'm looking her up. I'm calling her.
It's her.
It's her. Whatever she does. I don't even know what she does.
Hey, that's a great segue. So Natasha, tell us what it is that you do and kind of how you got there, a little bit about your windy path, because that's
Yeah, so I never know how to how far back in the path do I begin, but maybe I'll go from the nearest back. So what I do, right now I'm actually only doing what I do in mentorship situation, so a 3-month working with me environment. But I essentially, the energy healing part of what I do is I call myself a therapeutic intuitive because it's similar to therapy, although I'm not a therapist, in that someone comes to me with whatever's going on for them and I look kind of like 3D energetically at their energy to see the core of the issue. And that's actually also how I began doing inner child healing, because the inner child is always at the core of the issue. So, and now to go back into the past, I actually found out about inner child healing when I was 22 I was in a really bad romantic relationship, and I happened to find this therapist that did inner child healing. It wasn't super extensive, but it was enough to introduce me to the concept and to know, oh, this is something that exists. And she did teach me about a method to communicate to the inner child. So then when I am jumping all over the place here.
Oh,
But
no, it's good.
No, go for it.
So after that, there was a few years between, but then in my, I think I was about 30 or so, I started learning the energy healing that I do. I had seen a lot of different intuitives, and I saw someone who did what I do. And this is like pre the internet being a place where you could take classes all over on the internet. And this school was in San Francisco and I was living in New York at the time. And so I called them and I was like, do you have anyone here who's doing that? And they said they did. And so then for the next 2 years, it was just this very intimate experience where it was me, the teacher, and one of my friends, just over 2 years every week, started learning this process, which is chakra based, learning how to read energy. It's really about, I actually teach like a little mini class on it. And my class, what I always say is that it's really about trusting yourself, because it is a whole, it's a language, but it's a language you can't hear. You have to sense and feel, and you have to trust yourself in order to do that. So it's really about learning, first trusting your intuition and this whole other um, part of you, your energy body, that you're not familiar with before that. Most people aren't anyway. Or if they are, they've been usually talked out of it, or, just said that's not true or whatever. So anyway, this process is seeing the pictures, beliefs, patterns within the energy system. Like I said, it's chakra based, so it usually starts there, looking at what chakras light up as the person talks. And like I said, it's usually a lot of inner child stuff going on there. But I also, if it comes up naturally, I will see past lives. I usually will look at a contract if someone's having a hard time with someone, just energetically, an energy contract. So yeah, so that's what I do. And at the time I was just doing it for my own healing. I was actually a writer, and I was doing improv comedy at the time. It was like two very different worlds that I was in at the same time. Um, and then when I decided to not do that anymore, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I thought I was going to be a therapist. I started going to school for it, but every time I think about being a therapist and even start the process, it's just I kept getting a no. So I stopped doing that, and I was like, why am I don't know, it's always been like, why it feels like such a perfect fit, or like it should be. But I am really grateful that I didn't end up following through with that, because just like there's a lot of I mean, in a way it's good because it's very regulated, but you're also not allowed to do the work that I do, like
Right.
looking in the energy body and stuff like that. So
The world would have lost that energy piece, and it's a rigid, it's kind of much more rigid than,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do wish there was some way, because there are a lot of coaches, it's like it's just not regulated, and so there's just so much in there. There's so many amazing coaches, but then there's so many bad therapists too. So I mean, in a way, who's just, anyway, and that's a real tangent, but
Yeah.
but then the end of this is that I had my kids, and I was writing while I was having my kids a little bit. I was kind of doing freelance. But then I was like, oh, I think I just want to stop doing that as a career, and I really want to start doing this work to help people.
So how do you not, I know we're going to talk about fear, right? And this is something like where you keep hearing the no, but the stopping to jump from something that's solid for someone who's in transition, who wants to be a life coach, or someone who wants to sort of try a different career path. How did you feel? I know it's faith, but how was your transition to feel okay to just stop everything that you know that's bringing an income to try this out? And this has become amazing because you're
Amazing.
Thank
you
you.
are.
Thank you. Well, I actually wasn't that part of that career. The part of why I left it was because it was so unstable. So that wasn't my experience there, actually. Um, I mean, that was the whole time I was doing it for like over 10 years, and it was just like up and down and up and down. And that was part of like, this doesn't feel like it's in the flow for me. Um, so that really wasn't it. I had a different experience in terms of this transition, which was, like I said, it was a very different world, and it was kind of like coming out of the closet. And I still feel like there's always I'll look at my energy and be like, oh, there's another layer to release around feeling like this is who I am. I'm allowed to show up in this way, because my past really was so rooted, even with my family, in this kind of like skepticism. And especially in the comedy world, it's like, this kind of work is the butt of jokes, and I'm even guilty of that. Actually, you were going to bring up on the list that I wrote for My Little Pony for a little bit, which it's so funny to see who gets excited about that. It's different.
You could tell how old I am, right? I was like, My Little Pony. Oh my God. Was she a
Well,
character? No, she was a voiceover. I was like,
no, as a writer,
okay. I got excited though,
yeah,
Natasha.
yeah. But even in that, I wrote a character that was kind of like out there, because I'm so familiar with this like spiritual work, and so one of my characters was like an exaggeration of that. Even um I haven't gone back and watched it. I hope it wasn't too bad, but I mean, hopefully it was funny, but I hope it wasn't too pejorative. But anyway, yeah, so that for me was more my journey of like, I'm authentically doing this. This isn't like me being I don't know, a fraud, or like someone who's like yeah, trying to be fake or something like that. This is genuinely, I mean, I've done spiritual work my whole life. I've started meditating when I was 16. I've been seeing intuitive since I was 16. Um so yeah, so for me that was more of how it was. But I will say, when I help people who are making a leap like that, I always say it's best to do that kind of thing slowly, to be checking in with your inner child the whole time. Your subconscious doesn't like these big leaps, and you will often end up having lots of inner child parts who will come up and um, be trying to protect you, but also trying to stop that process, with a lot of inner critic voices, usually, or fear. So if you are making a leap like that, I always say it's really good to do it at the pace that feels right for you. You don't I mean, unless sometimes you're forced to do something, where
Mhm.
you don't have a choice, and that's different. Although the process is the same, it's just more intense, where I would say talking to that whatever inner child parts are coming up, because you don't have to do it, quote unquote, alone. You have yourself, and you can take care of these parts that are coming up.
So we all have inside of us, um, voices and critics from different avenues and aspects of our life, right? All of our experiences have created, kind of this duality where, somebody is trying to hype us up and somebody is trying to, keep us safe, I think
Mm,
is
mhm.
it feels like, right? So, um, so for somebody who's just kind of like hearing inner child, right? What are some of the basics, or what are some of the foundations that people need to know about, kind of the what lives inside of them?
Yeah. So, um, essentially, this comes from the I can't remember who, I think it was Peter Levine, who said that trauma isn't the event, it's how it lives in your body. And so the way I look at it, and maybe also how they look at it, I'm not sure, is all of these different parts that live in our that haven't had a chance to come to closure or release, and really heal it, are the inner child parts that haven't had this connection with our true selves, to feel the release, to feel healed, to feel like, okay, I'm good now about, whatever it was. And now I can connect to myself and feel safe. So whenever you are feeling, not just a big feeling, but a feeling that feels like out of control, or not even, it doesn't have to be out of control, but when you're triggered, essentially, that's always an inner child part. Because you can have big feelings and feel supported by your true self. But a lot of times, if it's coming out of nowhere, or you're just you don't know how to handle it, and you feel drowning in it or consumed by it, that's an inner child part. Um, so yeah, so when you are feeling that, it's the first step is always to notice, like, this me? You can ask yourself, I like to say, like, is this my soul? Is this my higher self? Or is this an inner child part? Because for me, that really, when I connect to my soul, I can instantly feel like, oh, okay. No, my soul isn't worried about like somebody who hurt my feelings. My soul can always see the bigger picture. If you don't connect to that idea, you can, I don't know, you may not connect to higher self either, but to know that there's always a bigger part of you. Even our ego, our inner adult is still part of our ego that has a bigger picture. So just first noticing that, and then doing whatever you can. I always say we want our inner adult or our higher self to be the loudest voice in our heads.
Mhm.
So doing whatever you can to come back to that place. And that usually involves some kind of getting back to regulation, essentially. So calming the body, doing what you can to connect to yourself, ground back into your body. Because when you're in an inner critic part, for instance, you're in your head. You can't be in that inner critic and also consciously be feeling your feet, feeling your legs, being in touch with your whole self at the same time.
Right.
So, and also something that I think is really helpful to know is that inner critic really is also an inner child part. It's a little kid that just doesn't have tools or resources to know how to get your attention. So if you can, it's hard at first, but if you can have compassion and treat it like, oh, this little kid just doesn't know how to communicate to me right now, then that can help to calm that voice down and start that connection with yourself.
Right. And a lot of it is just awareness of what you're thinking, awareness of how you're feeling, awareness of what you're reacting to,
Yeah, exactly.
on a regular, repeated pattern kind of cycle, which is a lot of the stuff, that we talk about,
Mm,
where am I triggered?
right, exactly. And it doesn't have to take, like, I always say, you don't have to like be meditating for an hour twice a day or even once a day. Just starting to notice, oh, what's coming up for me right now? What am I feeling right now? What am I noticing right now? Because if you've been merged with an inner child part for your whole life, which most of us have without realizing it, depending on the part, um, you do think that's you. Like, this is it. This is who I am. This is just the world. This is how the world is. And starting to question, well, what if this is a part? What if this isn't actually the truth? Can help to start to shake things up.
Yeah. Yeah. Shifting your beliefs that you've been, you've attached to and you've been holding on to that no longer serve you, that you
Exactly.
needed for whatever protection or, whatever safety or security, at one aspect of your life. It's, it's like nice to be able to say, wow, I recognize that, but I no longer need that. So
Right. Or like, what does this part need from me right now? I like to do that because that brings that more in and can help you integrate versus, okay, I don't need that anymore. I know you weren't saying it in that way, but that's
yeah.
what a lot of people, um, I mean, I thought that too. It's just intuitive to think like, okay, I don't need these beliefs anymore. I'm going to shut them out, when actually we actually need to bring them closer.
Yes, yes, that's a beautiful point. I mean, you want to embrace them and thank them. You want to, heal the relationship with them.
Exactly.
And when you heal the relationship with them, they will find their way. Yeah.
Well, then it can become joyful, or because these inner child parts, they don't want to be the ones in charge, which is what's happening when you're overwhelmed by them. And so when they're no longer in charge and they aren't taking on this great responsibility, they can have fun. You can tell them like, "Oh, what do you want to do right now?" And they can go play, and you will notice in your life that wait, I feel more joyful. This is weird. Like I've had that happen so many times with myself. And it's just, it's one of my favorite things to hear from clients when they feel like, when they start noticing all the joy in their life and things they are doing now that create so much joy. And that's because of the healing of that relationship, which wouldn't happen if they're trying to just shove them out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes sense. Perfect
Yeah.
sense. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you for that.
I mean, we can have a lot of time asking you so many questions, Natasha, because it's beautiful for our audience to hear, what we're talking about in authentic conversation all the time: alignment, healing, our inner child. So the way that our audience can find you and some of the things, and you did mention that right now you have switched so you're no longer doing the 1 hour and half hours, Natasha. You're only doing the 3-month package, but I know you have a $25 one that I also saw. Yes, I did. I didn't know.
Yeah, you can ask me a question for $25, and then I leave you like a 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes it's longer, voicemail responding to the question. But I do, yeah. So right now I'm not sure how long that break will be, but I have a book coming out April 18th. So I'm just trying to give myself some space actually to um enjoy that and feel into that. And maybe I might be creating, I do have a class for people who pre-order, but I'm also just feeling into what would be good for people after they buy the book. I have an inner child class, but I'm thinking about revamping that so that it's even more supportive after people buy the book.
Okay.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All great things.
Mhm.
I love the $25 questions because I didn't know about that. So and for our audience, when you work with Natasha, she always will ask you like, so different from therapy than working with Natasha is like, in therapy, we kind of like talk about a little bit of everything, but Natasha will always ask you like one specific question of why you're reaching out to her, like what's mostly like impacting right now, like what's triggering you, which was always interesting for me because I wanted to talk about everything. But
well, you could have, and anyone can do that, but it's just
yeah,
less helpful than a half hour or hour passes. And it's like,
yeah, it goes like
talk to
that.
me.
No, it always you always brought it back, and I love the fact that if you're not ready to also do the work and listen to, it's not going to be she's not going to tell you your future, and she's going to really tell you exactly what you need to hear, and sometimes it's not what we want to hear. So I'll tell you guys.
Well, I will say, yes, that's true. My goal though is always to do it with self-compassion
No,
and
it
kind of,
was
I'm a very anti-tough love person, and like for my life and my clients, it's not how I work, but yes, I am truthful. That is true.
no,
Yeah. Authentic.
and
Yeah.
it's important because
Yeah.
when you are looking for someone who doesn't know you, right? If we wanted to have a conversation with our best friend who's going to soothe us and our
Right.
ego and tell us that you're
Exactly.
kind of like always right.
Right.
Um,
That's
but
not
when
happening.
the beauty of, yeah, and when it's beautiful, like, I mean, you said to me, you have to cry. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to cry. What are you talking about? Cry. I'm the happy person, right? But these are the things that we want to work on that's going to make us our better self and work with our inner child and heal. And so that we can be in the present moment and be a better version of who we are, if that is what you're looking for, because that's what I definitely, desperately wanted. And I didn't want just anyone who knew me. I wanted two strangers that are here today who were going to hold me accountable, who were going to love me and nurture me and guide me, because I knew that there was better, and that I knew that I belong in this earth. And you have to find your circle. That's what we talk about in authentic conversation. And that's what we want to teach our audience and why you're here, because there's so many different ways that you can find your tribe. This is what worked for me. For our audience, it could be going to church, it could be spending a day at the beach and being in nature, whatever works for our audience. We just want to let you know that there are different tools out there that can help you. That is not the ordinary way of going through therapy. what life coaching is, what you do, Natasha, and Susan does, is definitely different, and not everybody knows about it. And
Yeah,
you're
I
talking.
will. That's actually a good segue for my podcast, which is called Getting to Know Woo, which is basically about that having people learn about basically destigmatizing woo techniques and tools, because that's what transformed my life. Therapy, I sound like I'm anti-therapy here, but therapy is amazing for intellectually understanding things. But after that, I was just like, okay, I know this is happening. What now? And so that's what my podcast is about, talking about all those woo tools.
That
Woo
is
tools.
awesome. That is awesome. And I think, it's just the awareness that, and you mentioned it, right? If it feels right for you, you've kind of got to, you've got to follow that path,
Yeah.
regardless of what other people are, saying about things, it's like,
Yeah.
it's not their business. It's really yours. So
Yeah.
trusting yourself and, trusting your instinct and, trusting the universe and the directions, that are laid out in front of you.
Yeah, if it's making you feel better, there's no reason. I mean, not like, I'm not talking about like short term like drugs and stuff like that, but if you're learning these tools and you're feeling better, there's not a reason not to do it.
Yeah.
No, and you know what, guys, at the same time, for myself, like I had to learn that my crystals work for me, and that people in my environment, even though they kind of joked about it or the uncomfortableness of like my space, it became, um, I had to validate myself, which, through working with you, Natasha, and I was honest to say, what does validating myself mean at one point, right? Like I just was hearing it, but was not understanding it. And I'm still coming out of the closet with what works for me. And there are still parts of it that I keep it to myself. It's my little, I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And when I'm ready, I will be. But I know now that I can stand up for myself and say, well, this is what I believe. And I know you believe in this. Can we come to a middle agreement of what we both believe, right? Because everything is, at the end of the day, is about love. It's about energy, and energy, we all feel it, right? We are all empaths. We just haven't been taught that. We all feel each other's energy. We can feel when a kid is sad. You can feel when your partner, you come home and you feel the energy. People say you can cut the elephant in the room, right? These phrases are there because it's already been in our society. It's just been stigmatized that, oh, you're doing this is so weird. But that's why we're here to continue to open up our audience's mind and support them and let them know that whatever works for you inside that makes you happy is what you have to honor it. And even if you have to keep it for a little bit in the closet, it will come out eventually.
Yeah, you don't have to pressure yourself. It's just,
Never.
if you're around somebody that's not supportive, you don't have to pressure yourself to pull, to confront somebody about it. But validating yourself, you can validate yourself at the same time, while you're with somebody like that too.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for your time, Natasha. Can you please tell us again what's the name of your book and where we can find it?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why that is.
We love technology, Natasha. Don't worry. It's about energy that's happening.
It's saying that it's saying it can't detect my camera. It keeps turning it off, and now it's saying it can't detect it. I'm really sorry.
No,
It's
you're fine.
okay.
I don't know why it won't let me do this. Okay, well, my book. This is not a great time for this, but my book is called
No.
Healing Your Inner Child, and it comes out April 18th. There we go.
There you are. Oh, no,
It went away. I'm in and out. That's interesting that this is
We'll edit this and we'll add a picture of your book. Don't you worry. But the cat
okay.
is cute.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna try one more time.
Try.
Doing it. Okay. So anyway, it's called Healing Your Inner Child. And if you send me your pre-order, I created a class called The Inner Gaze, which is all about inner validation. And it's a class and a meditation that you can do to help you connect to your true self, and and working with your inner child to be looking at you rather than externally.
She's
Perfect.
back.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the podcast again?
My podcast is Getting to Know Woo,
Ooh.
and that's everywhere you get podcasts. And you can find me. I actually did have a name for my business, Highest Light Healing, but I've since gone to my name, which was this week actually, which was a powerful decision. It was like another way of coming out of, without even realizing it, coming out of the closet. Um, and I didn't even realize I was kind of hiding behind that name until I was like, I think I just changed to my name. And then I was like, wow, it feels really powerful. So I'm on TikTok and Instagram at Natasha Levinger.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah, my
Thank you.
website is still right now Highest Light Healing, but it's going to be turning to Natasha Levinger soon.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
we will
you.
add everything in our comments. And again, Natasha, Susan, guys, it's an honor for me. Do you hold space for me?
Aw, thank you.
So, and
You're
for being
very
here
easy
today.
to hold space for. Thank you both. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.